Alright guys, brand new legendaries and uniques coming out in Season 9 for Diablo. So for starters, this is going to be happening on Season 9. Let's go ahead and talk about all of the newer changes for all of the classes with their brand new weapons and some of the new pieces of gear. So for starters, we're going to be covering the Barbarian. So keep in mind, we don't have all of the numbers. They did show off some of the newer changes for the uniques in terms of like what do these roll to, but we didn't get definitive things for everything mentioned, but these are kind of like the quick notes that they did give us. So more than likely, we're going to see a change to the Earthquake. My guess is a numerical downgrade in terms of its change. They have a lot of these Paragon nodes simplified, as in you don't have to reach a threshold to get the bonus. So expect to see a lot of buffs overall with Barbarian in terms of quality of life and higher uptime on any multipliers in the Paragon zone. There's also a base buff to a lot of the basic skills for all of the classes, but this will also make Barbarian even better because the basic skill Cleave Unique is going to be pretty good. So this is the brand new Barbarian pair of boots called the Hooves of the Mountain God. This is one of the brand new uniques that we get for the Barbarian. We also may see some updates to specifically some of the legendaries that are the aspects, especially with the Earthquake. My guess is some sort of numerical number change, like basically a debuff or a nerf to it, but as far as the unique goes, new pair of boots, it's giving us movement speed, basic attack speed, which is actually pretty good, especially if you get like a greater affix on that. You also get fury per second, and then you get 4 ranks to belligerence, and then when you attack with a basic skill while at max fury, your fury will increasingly drain until you run out, while all of your basic skills now cleave, dealing 100x increased damage. So we may want to go ahead and lock in. If you guys have ever played the Charge Bash Barbarian, that was a really fun build, and now since everything can cleave, you can maybe select the skill that you want. You can maybe do some interesting things with Flay for that 100x increased damage, and then on top of it, if it gets buffed by the base skill, again this is all classes, there's like a 2 to 3 times multiplier for the basic skill, so all of those are getting buffed, and on top of that, Spiritborn counts your other skills as basic skills, so we'll wait and see if that class also gets some massive buffs due to the changes on that. But pretty cool, you get up to like 100x damage here, and then again, basic attack speed, getting this greater affix could be pretty big, so lock in with some basic builds for the Barbarian in Season 9. Next up, as far as Druid, okay, so Cataclysm getting some nerfs over here. A lot of it had to do with specifically snapshotting some of the skills, so who knows exactly what they're going to be changing to this. Just more than likely expect some changes to Cataclysm. My guess is some nerfs. Now, technically, there's also a Stoneburst Laser Druid. They didn't mention anything with that. That could be the next best build. If they nerf Cataclysm, but they're also buffing Grisly Rage with Poison, which is interesting here. We'll talk about the unique in a second. But as far as Grisly Rage, when one of the changes, if you guys remember, one of the builds that I ran with Grisly Rage was an infinite Grisly Rage build. We actually hit rank 1 with it, and then literally they just nerfed it right after we like basically got that build up and running. So I think the main problem with Grisly Rage is that like if you want the skill to be good, this is just kind of me talking to Blizzard here, you need people to be able to upkeep it. One of the biggest things with a lot of builds that you like change that basically makes people not want to run it anymore is if the uptime on Grisly Rage for all of these bonuses does not be able to persist, there is a huge downtime on people wanting to even play it, because then there's like, 10-20 seconds where like the character feels useless. So if they really want to change this, you need to just let people have perma Grisly Rage on. It was something that got nerfed in previous season, and that's why people just simply don't play that ability anymore. And then they want to improve splashing poison puddles. It's kind of like a new way to play it. But basically with the Druid, you now have the ability to wear bear and kind of make these poison puddles, and then you get increased poison damage. So here's how it works. It's a brand new two-hander over here, so that's actually a pretty big investment, but it still has the most important thing, which is the chance for your pulverize to hit twice. So more likely we're going to be looking at a Grisly Rage build maybe, and I say maybe because again, if you can't persist that bonus, people are just going to look at alternative things to get your damage up. Anyways, it does give us willpower. It's got some poison damage. It also has on the implicit damage to poison enemies. And then, again, you have that really good chance for Pulverize to hit twice. You also have a massive amount of resource cost reduction. I mean, look at that GA 67 already with 0 masterworking, so it's going to be quite nice. And then the special unique power for the Rotting Lightbringer is going to be every 10 seconds, pulverized forms a puddle that deals 400x of its damage as poisoning damage over 6 seconds, and then the pulverizing on the puddle splashes for another 40x of the puddle's total damage within the area and around it. So the problem that I see with this is it's going to be feels bad for maybe just clearing out some of the trash monsters, because remember, you have to wait every 10 seconds to get this big bonus, and the rest of the stats aren't super lucrative to the point where I'm like, oh man, I cannot wait to actually run it. But as far as it goes, this may be something to consider with the druid in terms of how viable it is. Going over my extra notes for specifically the druid over here, again, I think we have to have the infinite to make it actually something that people want to run. Next up, we're going to be talking about the Necromancer. So there are some changes with the Necromancer. Soul Rift is getting a nerf. It is a very small nerf though. Basically, it's going to be no more barrier on it. And then we're nerfing Blood Wave, and then Skelly Mages are getting a pretty massive buff with one of the brand new uniques. So Skeletal Archmages is kind of the new thing. So I think it's kind of cool that we're getting something a little bit different, but I really don't feel like we needed to nerf Blood Wave, even though I get it, it's really cool. I think one thing that people don't like is having some of their favorite ways to play the game, and then they're like, okay, in the next season we're nerfing it. I think that the main goal should just be bring everything kind of up to par with other builds in the game, versus like, okay, there's too many people playing this build, which means people like your build, why kind of nerf it? That's, again, kind of my feedback to them. But we are getting something that may be one of the best things for the next season, which is the Hand of Naz, which is a pair of gloves that gives you max life, attack speed, gives you skeleton mage damage, as well as ranks to the skeleton mage mastery, which that's probably what you want to get greater affix here. Anyways, if you sacrifice both your skeletal warriors and golems, grants additional skeletal mage for each minion sacrifice. And then when a skeletal mage attacks enemies 25 times without dying, it upgrades to a skeletal archmage. Skeletal archmage teleport to safety when attacked, and their attacks occasionally shatter on impact, dealing 100x increased damage to the target and up to 3 additional targets. So you can basically have it bounce. So that's a pretty big multiplier over here. I don't know what this exactly means when it says occasionally shatters, because if that's like 1 out of 10, then that's like a very low multiplier, right? But you also are getting those ranks to the Skeletal Mage Mastery, and then sacrificing the minion gives you an additional minion. So all the bonuses with your mage get even stronger because you're getting additional minions. And obviously, eventually, all of your mages will become arc mages, because, well, you are getting the bonus for all of them. And then next up, this is where there is a pretty big nerf to rogue. Okay, so unfortunately, even though I love the rogue class, I gotta admit, it's not looking super hot. We're getting major nerfs to specifically Death Trap. They want to buff up the Poison Trap, but there's not as many good multipliers for that compared to Death Trap for sure. Even though we had the new like Icarus Rose, maybe some of these new aspects, again, these legendary aspects, once they get buffed up perhaps, that could be something to consider from the legendary change. But as far as my notes on the Rogue, Death Trap, massive nerfs, they're buffing in the Poison Trap, and then Eagle Horn is getting some buffs. I don't know if that's going to be a viable build. I believe this is for what, Pen Shot, right? Hopefully this will be something that is a lot more viable, but let's be real, Sky Hunter is kind of like the go-to, so unless you make this really, really massive, I would say people may just skip out it, so fingers crossed it's going to be good. There is this new Flurry unique. I'm going to admit it's kind of mid, because Air of Perdition will give you more damage, and it does give you massive amount of attack speed, which we'll talk about, but it really depends on where the bucket is for this brand new attack speed that we are getting. But the main thing that I want to mention with Rogue going into Season 9 is that right now, if you do want to bin max, I believe the rank 1 build is using like this 300x plus multiplier, getting your close quarters combat, which is really cool because you can basically run any sort of melee variant, or even a range variant. You can get really close for Barrage, because Barrage on a long range, it's not going to be hitting most of the targets. So there is a pretty big nerf to specifically close quarters, because they wanted everything to be near 75x, and this one has an uncapped modifier. They are capping a lot of the modifiers on a lot of the key passives, so that could be a massive nerf to Rogue. Even though there's a lot of other good options in Rogue, that multiplier was just so much larger, so a lot of people were running it. But I feel like if it's something that you invest your character's time into and you build into it, you should be rewarded for it. We'll see what that cap is, but if it's like going from 300x to 100, that's a very massive nerf, so we'll have to wait and see what comes out of that. But they do get something brand new, and I wanted to mention that it honestly is kind of mid in terms of how viable it is, depending on this attack speed here. Okay, so first off, max life, armor, whatever, movement speed, cool, whatever. Like, these don't really matter. The thing that would be a little bit different is to the ranks of Flurry, although, again, if you get Harlequin or Air of Perdition, you kind of match that, right? However, Air of Perdition gives you that other big multiplier, and plus the damage to like angels and demons, so you get another additive on that. But how it works is now you can overexert yourself when you use Flurry, so you spend HP if you don't have enough resource. So you have to basically make it so you're spending all of your resource, and then you cut into your HP. Remember, Flurry can actually heal you anyways. There's a node where you can just teleport and it'll heal you for 10%. So this 10% life cost does not matter, but you also want to make sure that you're spending enough energy, but because you can attack super fast, it should cut into your HP relatively quick, but again, you can circumvent that by just getting the node that gives you 10%. So as far as it goes, like, you can overwrite this. You can maybe even run like the Undying aspect plus any other ways that you would be able to heal. That would be another way that you can recover. So you get a 50x multiplier. Again, it's under Air of Perdition. And then also with Air Perdition, you get that crit on it, which is really good. That's why I was saying that it's kind of mid in that design. However, you do get up to 50% attack speed. And that always rolls, apparently. Like, that doesn't have a range. It says your attack speed by 50%. It's just straight up 50 for 5 seconds. And now this does not stack. If this did stack, then it would go crazier. And then it would actually be good because I don't know how many times it would stack up to. But because you can attack quite fast, there is this new like dot variant. And if you do apply, let's say, a poison on top of like Flurry and it's attacking super, super fast, well, you may be able to have something kind of cool to mess around with. However, I want to mention that this attack speed cap, it's really easy for Rogue to actually max out on the attack speed cap in categories. So I would say that this may not be something to look at in terms of making a build. If you want to play Flurry build, you may still want to actually run Air of Perdition. It depends on where this attack speed bucket goes. If you guys didn't know, there are 2 buckets of attack speed in Diablo, and you can only get to 100 in each one. Overflow is very, very easy on the Rogue, as in, like, you may get over 100 and it won't add anymore. 200 is technically the max, but it depends on where it goes. Anyways, Sorc, let's go ahead and talk about the Sorc. So, a Lightning Spear nerf to specifically the Splintering Energy legendary aspect, so that's going to be changed to the legendary. The Burning Key passive now has a cap, which kind of sucks, but they also are buffing a bunch of the burning skills, but I don't know if people are actually utilizing the other skills. Like, I haven't seen any like firewall builds in quite some time. Plus, the firewall build was basically utilized to split and get more projectiles out of your fire bolt anyways when people were running it. It's not like the actual firewall, right? So as far as it goes, the burning skills are getting a buff to kind of make up for the nerf on this. There's supposed to be a massive Hydra buff, so this is going to be kind of cool to maybe check out if you guys are interested in playing the Sorc. So we are getting a brand new item called the Ophidian Iris. So on the implicit, the casted Hydras have +2 heads, which is good because if you happen to get a perfect rolled on the unique power of Ophidian, you get 200x just alone with that. And if you get any other things that increase heads, I mean, that could go crazy with the multiplier. But it does have pretty good stats. It has it's got critical strike chance, it's got pyromancy, well, this is like additive, so it's like whatever. And then you also have the Devouring Blaze, and now how it works is Hydra is a core skill, so all the bonuses, like if you're running like Star of the Skies, Air of Perdition, well, it's going to be awesome because it now counts as a core skill. And then for each head above 3 that it would have, the Hydra instead grows larger and deals 100x increased damage. And it says for each head above 3. So again, your goal is to get as many heads as possible, and then you can get a crazy multiplier. So I'd be on the lookout for this. They also said the Hydras are going to be larger, and it can do splash damage. So it's going to be much better for clear speed as well. And I think this will be kind of a cool thing if you guys are interested in doing like the Infernal Hordes, as they are buffing the like gem rewards for it. So maybe you can lock in, make a turret build, and everything's going to be deleted. Be kind of a cool, fun thing to mess around with. So I'm definitely looking out for Sorc maybe as my starter class for Season 9, because this just looks like it's going to be fun. Next up, guys, Spiritborn. So what are we getting in Season 9 for the expansion class? So there's going to be some changes with Deflection, and Razor Wings basically going to be getting a buff. So that's going to be cool. And then they also mentioned the Hunter Reset. They didn't actually explain what they are changing specifically with this, but basically they want it to be a little bit more consistent. So if you didn't get the reset, it didn't feel as bad, because let's be honest, everyone still plays the Hunter, and they actually went into like 90% plus are basically playing it. And while they have buffed up the Gorilla Ultimate as well as the Eagle one, the Hunter is just so much better because of the way it kind of interacts in the game, basically giving you that bonus massive damage, and then you get all of the other bonuses that you would because it's a Jaguar, and most people play double Jaguar. And then there's also going to be a huge new build coming out with Poison and Thorns that I'm actually very interested in. It has some potential, honestly, to be one of the best builds in the game, because it's got a crazy unique. But as far as my notes here, they didn't specify what they're doing with the Hunter reset, but something is going to change with it, so it may not be able to be up 100% of the time, but there's going to be some more consistency that you get out of it, because they mentioned like it feels bad when you don't get those resets. But the thing that I want to go ahead and highlight is the brand new Balazan's Maxodl. So these are a new pair of unique pants, and it's going to give you Dex, Max Life, some Thorns, which is actually important for the build, and then you get +2 Bastion. So how it works is each attack damages close enemies for 300% of your Thorns, but it also deals 100% of this damage as poison over 3 seconds. And each time you retaliated with Thorns for 5 seconds, the poisoning damage is increased by 100 up to 300%. So it only has to proc 3 times. So I think that this has a lot of potential, especially because you can scale your poisons to be like when it would normally crit, you would get some like extra massive bonus with the Noxious Resonance. So it's going to be up in the air to see how powerful this actually is, because I've always wanted to see a Thorns build kind of emerge out of the game to be like top tier. And there was a Barbarian build, if you guys have remembered, like I dropped gameplay where you could one-shot anything in the game. It would go crazy in terms of damage. It's because it was a bug. But that build was pretty awesome. However, it never really got to come out. I think this was only on PTR only for the Barbarian, where you would apply your Thorns damage and you could basically stack it with a Whirlwind. It was really cool. But other than that, I haven't seen Thorns really see any good, play at the end game. It's actually quite great for leveling. But as far as it goes, yeah, you can lock in and either scale Thorns to deal the damage, because remember, each of your attack damages all of the enemies for that amount of Thorns. And I'm curious to know if there's any really cool variants of Thorns that has emerged. There at one point was a rogue Thorns build where you could actually crit with Thorns, but then that actually got nerfed. It was with something that would give you like 100% like crit, and you could crit with Thorns, but normally you cannot crit with Thorns. But I'm wondering if this interaction may let you do it, because then maybe you can get that sort of like crit with the poison, because again, Noxious Resonance, it kind of works with like dot damage or like the poison, and so it'd be cool to see if this is going to be a top tier build. So be on the lookout for some sort of Thorns variant for Season 9 for the Spiritborn. But let me know, guys, what class are you guys most excited to mess around with? By the way, there's a lot of unique changes, basically a lot of buffs to these things that people aren't using. So even though I didn't show any legendaries, just expect to see some of the ones like I mentioned over here, like anything with any bursting venoms here. They mentioned these are getting some buffs here, but we don't know the exact numbers here. But I'm definitely looking forward to trying out these new arc mages and see how consistent this is, because it says occasionally. I kind of need that number to determine if it's going to be good, because if it's like, again, once every 10 attacks, or if it's like every other attack, then that kind of changes things up. But as far as Druid goes, because it's every 10 seconds, I highly recommend them to change this number to like every time you use Pulverize, because when you have something on a long cooldown, especially 10 seconds, if you're on that boss, which is kind of the problem that if you guys have played the Druid Grizzly variants, the boss sometimes just takes too long, because to get all of these overpowers, and remember they're nerfing overpower in the next season by 80% of the max life bonus, which is kind of how you stack damage on the Werebear. You run into a situation when the boss just feels like it takes forever, and then every 10 seconds you have to wait to get this bonus. Yeah, I know that the poison does last, but it's going to do its total damage instantly on it. So if you can maybe make the change on the every 10 seconds to maybe make it every 2, or again, more consistent, I think people will be more interested in actually playing your new thing that you actually build. Anyways, that's going to wrap things up. Let me know, guys, what you think of the season. Again, what do you guys plan to start off with? For me, I think I'm going to start off with the Sorc for the PTR. The Hydra build is looking kind of fun, and again, the multiplier looks pretty big. Big numbers, good. But anyways, if you guys want to see gameplay, I'll be dropping it very soon, because the next season's PTR is starting very, very soon. But take care, and I'll catch you Diablo players in the next video. Peace out.